Welcome to this Explainer Masterclass. Today, we're diving deep into a highly strategic breakdown of the Cambridge AS and A-Level Accounting 9706 syllabus. Specifically, we're looking at a topic that acts as an absolute gatekeeper to the top grades. I'm talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different business entities. Now listen, the difference between an average grade, say a C or a B, and an elite A star doesn't usually come down to whether you can balance a spreadsheet. It almost always comes down to one specific area: how masterfully, how critically you can evaluate these different business structures. So let's get right into it.
Our core objective today is to literally decode the examiner's mind. We want to know exactly what they are looking for when they are grading those high-tariff extended response questions. We're going to utilize very precise procedural frameworks and deploy critical analysis strategies that separate the top 1% of candidates from the rest of the pack. You see, the theoretical architecture of this topic requires much more than just rote memorization. It requires precise definitions. It requires an understanding of complex causal relationships, and crucially, it requires integration with other syllabus areas. By the end of this session, you won't just be answering questions. You'll be reverse engineering high-scoring, bulletproof responses that examiners simply have to award full marks to.
Here is our structural blueprint for today's session. We'll start with command word anatomy, move into a deconstruction debate, tackle the methodology roadblock, jump into an interactive pause and practice workshop, and finish with a final strategy recap.
Act 1. Command word anatomy and the examiner's lens.
Okay, let's talk about the specific cognitive domains that the exam objectives are targeting: knowledge, analysis, and evaluation. I want you to imagine you're sitting in the exam hall and you take a digital highlighter to an exam paper. The prompt you get is going to hinge entirely on the command word used. If the question asks you to analyze, it is demanding descriptive, factual recall combined with an examination of how different parts interact. You're taking a concept apart to see how it works. But, and this is absolutely crucial, if the word is evaluate, the game changes entirely. The constraints of the prompt are totally different. Evaluate demands justified recommendations. It wants you to weigh things up and draw conclusions about relative importance. If you analyze the differences between two entities without ever offering a final justified judgment, you are severely capping your marks. You literally miss the entire evaluation requirement. This is where so many students leave easy points on the table.
Moving on, let's talk about an examiner alert. When we read through the Cambridge Principal Examiner reports, which are absolute goldmines by the way, they consistently reveal a very frustrating trend. Candidates, even the smart ones, lose vital marks because they confuse key terminology. You simply cannot afford to be vague when you are setting up your answer. You must define key business entity terminology clearly before you start utilizing it in your extended responses. Why? To avoid massive examiner penalties. If you are comparing, say, a limited company to a sole trader, you must explicitly define what unlimited liability is. Don't just say it's risky. Define it as the legal obligation where the owner's personal assets are at risk to pay off business debts. It's the terrifying prospect of losing your house because your bakery failed. If you don't lay down this solid conceptual foundation first, the examiner can't give you credit for the high-level analysis that follows, because they aren't convinced you actually know what the terms mean.
Act 2. The deconstruction debate.
To really understand this, I want you to imagine two scholars. Let's call them Alex and Sam, in a collaborative digital study suite, prepping for their 9706 exam. They are staring down a brutal 15-mark essay question about changing a business structure. Now, Alex is highly technical. He excels at formulas and facts, but he struggles a bit with open-ended evaluation. Sam, on the other hand, is a creative thinker. He's great at arguments, but maybe lacks structural precision. So they start debating how to tackle this to unlock the top-tier marking bands, specifically AO1 for knowledge, AO2 for application, and AO3 for analysis and evaluation. Alex pushes hard for a purely factual approach. He says, look, we just need to list every single factual advantage and disadvantage we can remember. We just bullet point the definitions and we're good. But Sam steps in and argues for a much broader conceptual perspective. Sam says, no way, that only gets us half the marks. If we are discussing a change from a partnership to a limited company, we can't just talk about liability in a vacuum. We have to bring in cross-topic connections. We have to talk about how issuing shares alters the capital structure and affects the control of the business. Sam is right here. That is exactly how you show causal relationships. You have to connect the dots.
Let's break down their two approaches side by side. Alex's approach is what we call isolated data interpretation. He's looking at sole traders in one paragraph and limited companies in a completely separate paragraph. It's like they exist in different universes. But Sam's approach is a true comparative analysis. To hit the highest marks, you must actively identify similarities and differences in the same breath. If you just write disconnected paragraphs, a list of sole trader facts followed by a list of limited company facts, you have not answered a comparative prompt. The examiner will read it and think, okay, they know the facts, but can they compare them? You have to weave them together. You have to use one to highlight the strengths or weaknesses of the other. It's like a debate on the page. Sam challenges Alex to stop just dropping data and start interpreting the theoretical architecture of the exam itself.
Act 3. The methodology roadblock.
Okay, so Alex and Sam are actively drafting a model response paragraph by paragraph, but they've just hit a massive roadblock. They know the facts, but their arguments just aren't flowing together smoothly, and they are burning way too much time. Just as they are about to get to the hardest part of the problem, I'm going to pause their session. And while they take a breather, make sure you hit subscribe to AC Exams IGCS AO and A levels and enable all notifications. We drop weekly Cambridge breakthrough strategies just like this one, and you do not want to miss them. Hit that bell.
All right, stepping back in to help our scholars get unstuck. They are suffering from a lack of structure. So I introduce them to a cognitive strategy I call the Method Mark Strategy. It's a 5-step process to ensure you never stare blankly at a page again. Step 1. Deconstruct the question. Literally, circle the command word so you know your boundaries. Step 2. Extract relevant data. Pull the specific numbers or scenario details right out of the stimulus material. Step 3. Select your analytical framework. Are we comparing profitability, risk, control? Decide before you write. Step 4. Execute with clear notation. Build the argument logically. And Step 5. Verify and present. Read it back to ensure you actually answer the specific prompt using the correct terminology. By applying this sequence, Alex and Sam stop panicking about how to link their paragraphs and start building a highly analytical, well-paced response.
And as they rewrite their flawed section out loud, they have to remember that accounting isn't just about what you say, it's about how you present it. There are strict presentation conventions you have to follow. You need proper headings to guide the examiner through your thought process. You need the correct terminology to prove your domain knowledge. You must use appropriate formats and provide clear annotation. Imagine an examiner who has been grading papers for 6 hours straight. If you hand them a messy, unformatted block of text, they are going to miss your brilliant points. Proper presentation transitions a mediocre, rambling answer into a flawless, full-mark response that practically grades itself.
Act 4. Interactive Pause and Practice Visual Workshop.
Let's put this into practice. I want you to look at the table on the screen. We have our entity types, sole trader, partnership, and limited company, measured against capital, liability, and control. If I put a 60-second visual countdown timer on the clock right now, how would you analyze this? Let's consider a scenario where a successful local bakery, a sole trader, wants to become a limited company to fund a massive national expansion. A weak student looks at this table and just regurgitates the data. They write, sole traders have low capital, but limited companies have high capital. That gets you almost 0 marks for analysis. A top-tier student, a student using our framework, extracts the data, interprets the relationships, and draws an evidence-based conclusion. They write, because the sole trader is inherently restricted to low capital generation, aggressive national expansion is severely hindered. Transitioning to a limited company resolves this bottleneck by allowing the issuance of shares to raise high capital. However, this comes at the direct cost of relinquishing full, autonomous control to a board of directors. Do you see the difference? Interpret the data. Create a narrative. Do not just state it.
Now let's play Spot the Flaw. Based directly on examiner reports, I'm going to reveal the top 3 warnings, the exact traps set by examiners that catch thousands of students every year. Warning number 1. Answers are too vague and lack specific details. If you write, it's easier to raise money, the examiner is screaming, how? You must specify that it's easier to raise capital through the issuance of ordinary shares or debentures. Warning number 2. Poor format and presentation. We just talked about this. No massive walls of text. Break it up. Warning number 3. Answers lack specific context to the given scenario. This is huge. If the exam prompt gives you a scenario about a manufacturing firm buying new machinery, and your answer is just a generic list of limited company benefits that could apply to a hair salon, you lose the application marks. You must tie your theoretical points explicitly to the daily operations of the specific business in the prompt. To systematically avoid these traps, you need the right vocabulary. Comparative analysis requires specific tools. Look at the difference between a poor answer listing basic facts and a strong answer. A strong answer uses comparative connectives, words like whereas, conversely, on the other hand. You must explicitly link the similarities and differences, support them with evidence from the scenario, and then draw a conclusion about relative importance. Here is a perfect sentence structure. While the administrative and regulatory burden of a limited company is significantly higher than that of a sole trader, the benefit of limited liability carries much greater relative importance given the high-risk financial nature of this specific expansion strategy. Bam! That sentence right there is an evaluator's dream. It acknowledges both sides, applies context, and makes a justified judgment. That secures top marks.
Act 5. Strategy Recap.
Looking back at our scholars, Alex and Sam, they had a massive breakthrough today. By combining Alex's precise factual recall with Sam's broader comparative methodology and running it all through our rigid procedural framework, they completely conquered the syllabus requirements. For your own exams, I want you to synthesize everything we've talked about into these 3 core pillars. First, the 3-step question scan. Deconstruct the command word, extract the context, select your framework. Second, the paragraph balance formula. Every point must have context, a comparative connective, and a causal link. And third, the last 5 minutes review checklist. Verify your formatting, your headings, and ensure your terminology is absolutely flawless.
Getting to that elite A-star tier isn't an accident. It requires rigorous, constant self-evaluation. You have to be your own harshest critic before the examiner ever sees your paper. So, I'm going to leave you with one final provocative question. It's a question you need to ask yourself every single time you finish a practice paper from now on.
Look at your final paragraph and ask yourself, does my answer truly evaluate alternatives? Does it directly compare approaches using connectives? And most importantly, does it provide a fully justified recommendation based on hard evidence? If the answer is no, then grab your pen, because you haven't finished the question yet. Crushing Cambridge exams requires consistent strategy and community engagement. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for AC Exams IGCSE O and A levels. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an exam hack, and get down in the comments right now and tell me your target grade. Claim it, work for it, and I'll see you in the next explainer.